It all started with a knock. Not the polite kind you hear at a neighbor's door, but the frantic, rattling kind that makes your coffee tremble in its cup. I was on my porch, half enjoying a Saturday morning, when the screen door jolted violently. I opened it and there she was. Karen, clipboard in hand, standing like she was about to brief the nation. "We need full access to your cabin today," she announced, voice flat, rehearsed, confident to the point of arrogance. "The HOA's community retreat is happening, about 100 people expected by noon." I blinked, coffee halfway to my lips. "Karen, this is my private cabin. Nobody told me anything about a retreat." Unbothered, she flipped through her clipboard like it was holy scripture. "According to HOA Rule 13, subsection 4, any shared amenities." I cut her off, jabbing a finger toward the iron gate I'd built with my own hands. "This isn't a shared amenity. I paid for this land. I maintain it myself. You don't get to host parties here." Her cheeks flushed, eyes darting to the road where vans and SUVs were already lining up, honking like concert-goers, foldable tables stacked high in a pickup bed. "You're making a scene," she hissed. "Embarrass yourself in front of the community." "Oh, you want a scene?" I replied calmly, stepping inside, grabbing my keys, and heading straight for the gate. Normally, I kept it open. Not today. Heavy iron clanged shut. Locked. Twice. Karen's composure cracked. "You can't just lock out the neighborhood." "I just did," I said evenly, turning back to the porch. Phones were out. People were filming. Someone yelled about calling the sheriff. Karen looked like she might collapse, but I wasn't finished. My property wasn't just fenced, it was fully surveilled. Every angle covered. As I sipped my now-cold coffee, I downloaded footage in real time. Karen had declared war and she had picked the wrong man. 10 minutes later, she was pacing like a commander without an army. Guests arrived, piled up behind the locked gate, confused and irritated. I could hear her frantic phone calls from the porch. "Yes, officer, he's obstructing an HOA-approved gathering." "No, I don't have a signed permission slip, but it's a community matter." I chuckled. Classic Karen. For years, she'd twisted HOA rules to her whim, shutting down yard sales for being unsightly, harassing kids on bikes, enforcing sacred paint colors. But trying to seize my private property? That was beyond her power. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up. The deputy stepped out, calm, scanning the scene. Karen rushed over like he was her savior. "There," she barked, pointing at me. "He's locking us out of the retreat." The deputy walked to the gate. "Sir, can you come down a moment?" I strolled over, phone in hand, documents ready. "Afternoon, officer. Just so we're clear, this is my property, paperwork to prove it." Karen's shrill voice cut in. "He's exploiting it for personal gain. It's listed as a common area." I handed over my deed. "Not anymore. 5 years ago, it had been an HOA zone, but when I bought the cabin, I negotiated it out. Fully independent." The deputy scanned it, and I watched as the truth hit Karen like a brick. "Ma'am," he said, "unless you've got a court order, he's within his rights. You can't use this property without his permission." Karen opened her mouth, only a strangled sound came out. Guests murmured, their festive excitement curdling into awkward disbelief. The deputy turned to me. "If anyone tries to breach that gate, call us." "Will do," I nodded. But Karen wasn't done. By Monday, 3 fresh letters appeared, taped to my gate courtesy of her, dripping with HOA jargon, empty threats, and pseudo-legal nonsense. Violation notices, daily fines, and a bold ultimatum to host a makeup retreat within 7 days or face consequences. I fed them straight to the wood stove. Still, I knew exactly what she was doing. Karen wanted intimidation, paperwork buried over weeks to make me surrender. Not happening. Next morning, I emailed the HOA board with my purchase contract, boundary survey, and the 2020 amendment proving my land was excluded from HOA jurisdiction. Short, sharp, any attempt to trespass will be considered harassment and pursued accordingly. Hours later, a reply from the HOA secretary. We acknowledge your exemption and have advised Karen to cease further action. We apologize for the confusion. I almost laughed. Confusion? Karen wasn't confused, she was furious. The board was just distancing themselves from her chaos. Then came the Facebook post, "Community picnic rescheduled now at Daniel's retreat cabin." My name, my property, plastered online like an open invitation. Screenshot taken immediately. I commented, "False information. This is private property. Anyone arriving will be trespassing." 10 minutes later, the post vanished. But the damage was done. 3 nights later, 12:42 a.m., tires crunched on gravel. Motion sensors flashed red. A black SUV parked outside the gate for people unloading folding chairs and a massive canopy. I stormed down the path, flashlight cutting through darkness. "Hey, private land. What are you doing?" They froze. One clutched a clipboard. Karen said it's approved. Well, one stammered. I stepped closer. "You've got 30 seconds to leave before I call the sheriff." This time, charges included. No arguments. Chairs tossed back in, muttering under their breath. I filmed everything. A message buzzed. "You're making this a bigger deal than it has to be. Don't forget, you still live here." Karen, game over. I pulled every scrap of HOA documentation, land maps, board minutes, bundled with my video evidence, and sent it to the HOA's legal team along with Karen's threatening message. Next day, a call from Mark, HOA president, worn and tired. "Daniel," Karen acted alone. "We're holding an emergency meeting to vote on removing her as event coordinator. This has gone too far." "Good," I said flatly. "Make sure she knows. One more stunt, sheriff, not me." That evening, I watched from my porch. Karen arrived last, arms folded, pale, tense. Meeting ended, Karen stripped of her title. Things quieted for a week, though whispers remained. Some neighbors supported her quietly. Others apologized for being misled. I held no grudges, just wanted peace. Sunday morning, I stacked firewood when I saw her again, flanked by 2 strangers, banner and camera in hand. "Need something?" I asked. "Filming a documentary," she announced smugly, "about community spaces being stolen by selfish individuals right here at your gate." I blinked. "You're filming on my property." She glanced at the cameraman. "Outside, public roadside, perfectly legal. Technically correct, but the game was obvious." I turned, flipped the breaker powering the gate security horn. A sharp alarm split the air. Birds scattered. Karen flinched. The cameraman nearly dropped his equipment. "This is harassment," she screamed. "So is trespassing," I yelled back. "I've called the sheriff." 2 minutes to clear out before citations. No argument. They packed up furious, silent, humiliated. 2 hours later, Mark arrived with an official letter. HOA voted unanimously to ban any claims on my property. Karen suspended 6 months. Gate stayed locked. Cabin stayed mine. Karen stayed quiet. She thought she could hijack my cabin for 100 people, but she never saw the gate slam coming. If you enjoyed watching her plans crash and burn, hit like, comment how you would have handled her, and share your own HOA stories. One locked gate at a time. Yeah, so just when I thought I could finally breathe, things got interesting again. Let me back up a sec. Peace never really lasts when Karen's in the picture. About a month later, I was enjoying a quiet Saturday morning, coffee in hand, sunlight hitting the porch just right, when I noticed a drone hovering over the tree. At first, I thought maybe it was a neighbor filming their property, but not, as was too coordinated, too loud. And, of course, a familiar voice came through the speaker. "Daniel, we're documenting community spaces." "Smile." I groaned. Not only was she relentless, but she'd somehow learned how to operate drones now. This wasn't just harassment, this was Karen 2.0. Tech-savvy, emboldened, thinking she could spin my cabin into some sort of villainous character for a little audience. I grabbed my own camera, not to post online, but to record the proof. If she wanted a showdown, Fanud do it professionally. I stepped onto the driveway, waved politely, and shouted, "You're on private property. Turn it off and leave, or I call the sheriff." She waved back, smug, as if I'd just invited her in. But the drone? It hovered a bit too close. That's when I remembered something important. The property survey wasn't just for show. It had buffer zones, legal easements, and specific limits on airspace intrusion over private land. Perfect. I texted the local sheriff's office a heads up. Potential trespass via drone recorded footage attached. Within 20 minutes, a deputy arrived. Karen scrambled, yelling something about freedom of expression and community storytelling, but I calmly handed the deputy my documentation. His eyes widened slightly. Yeah, Karen had miscalculated. The drone operator got a friendly warning, told to remove the device immediately. Karen's little entourage muttered under their breath, sulking as the deputy left. Now, here's where it got even juicier. About a week later, one of my neighbors, an older gentleman I'd barely spoken to before, came knocking. "Daniel, I saw what Karen's been doing. She's trying to rally support, but a lot of people think she's out of line. I've got some old HOA meeting minutes that could help." I invited him in. Turns out, Karen had a pattern stretching back a decade. Every time someone resisted her, she'd twist rules, fabricate complaints, and pressure people until they caved. And now, thanks to this neighbor, we had a full history. Dates, letters, emails, even internal board notes where other members privately admitted she was overstepping. I spent the next few nights compiling everything into a single digital dossier: evidence, videos, emails, minutes, the whole 9 yards. I labeled it clearly: Karen's unauthorized actions, HOA violations, and harassment. Then, I sent it to the HOA board and CC'd their legal counsel. My message was brief, direct, and calm. Any further action involving my property will be considered harassment and reported to the authorities. 2 days later, I got a call from Mark, the HOA president. He sounded exhausted, borderline exasperated. "Daniel, after reviewing all this, the board agrees. Karen's authority is revoked indefinitely, and any claims to your property are null. We're issuing a formal apology to you and the community." I could almost hear Karen groaning in the background. And yet, even with all the paperwork and legal backing, Karen couldn't resist one final theatrical attempt. The next weekend, I was stacking firewood when a moving van pulled up. A few of her loyal followers hopped out, setting up tents and a small stage just beyond my property line, clearly hoping I'd overreact. I calmly walked down, flashlight in hand. "Even here, this isn't okay. You've got 2 minutes to pack it up before I call law enforcement." They hesitated. One muttered, "She said it's fine." I raised an eyebrow. "She's not here, and neither are her permissions." They scrambled, tossing equipment back into the van. No yelling, no drama, just 3 embarrassed people retreating. I filmed everything just in case. From that point on, the HOA board maintained strict oversight. Karen was barred from all event coordination, her communications heavily monitored, and any mention of my cabin in official channels strictly prohibited. The moment I locked the gate each evening, it felt like a victory lap. Quiet. Calm. Finally, my property truly mine. But here's the twist you might not expect: Karen didn't vanish completely. Occasionally, neighbors would still whisper about her plans for reform or community storytelling. One even hinted she was consulting other HOA boards in neighboring counties, teaching her tactics. So, while my cabin was safe, the saga didn't fully end. The threat wasn't immediate, but the legend of Karen's obsession lived on, and I had to remain vigilant. Looking back, it was a mix of patience, legal knowledge, and just plain stubbornness that won the day. Cameras, documents, neighbors willing to step forward, all of it mattered. And yeah, maybe a little dark humor, watching her scramble and squirm, didn't hurt either. But at the core, it was about standing your ground, knowing your rights, and refusing to let someone manipulate fear and bureaucracy to take what's yours. So, the cabin stands, the gate stays locked, and Karen? Well, let's just say She finally learned there's a limit to how far you can push someone who knows exactly where the property lines and isn't afraid to defend them. If you've ever dealt with an overzealous HOA or a Karen-like character, share your stories below. How would you have handled her? Would you have stayed calm or gone full lockgate showdown? I'd love to hear how you navigate this kind of madness because, trust me, it's way more common than you think.